Welcome to the Geostrategic Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for watching or listening. 10,000 kilometers. That is the distance Iran claims its newest missile just conquered, officially putting the United States mainland in the crosshairs for the first time in history. Is this a terrifying strategic breakthrough or the world's most calculated military bluff? We've analyzed the secret tech, and the results are chilling. I want to know your take on this. Is the U.S. missile defense actually ready, or has the global balance of power just shifted forever? Don't hold back. Drop your opinion in the comments right now. I'm reading every single one, and I'll be replying to the best theories. If you're ready for the truth, hit that like button, share this video with a friend who needs to see this map, and subscribe. Let's dive into the evidence. So it's January 19, 2026. We are barely 3 weeks into the new year, and honestly, the dust. It just hasn't settled from those reports that started breaking late last year. It really feels like the geopolitical ground is shifting under our feet.
It certainly does. And it's not just the headlines. It's the specificity of the threat. We're not talking about vague rhetoric anymore.
Right.
We are looking at specific claims backed by, specific movements on the ground.
Exactly. And that's our mission for this deep dive. We need to move past the panic and just look at the evidence. We're going to unpack this 10,000 kilometer claim, but we're also going to look at a very specific chemical clue, something called sodium perchlorate.
The smoking gun.
It might just be. Because if this is real, the math changes for everyone, from Washington, D.C. all the way to Tokyo.
Precisely. We have to separate the signal from the noise. The implications here go far beyond just another missile test. This touches on global economics, alliances, really the fundamental concept of deterrence.
Okay, so let's start with that signal. The core allegation. It's terrifyingly simple on paper.
Yeah.
Iran claims they have successfully tested a ballistic missile with a range of 10,000 kilometers.
Which is just a massive number.
Yeah.
To put that in perspective for you listening, 10,000 kilometers isn't just long range. It's the threshold for true intercontinental capability. If you fire from Iran, that range covers all of Europe, most of Africa, huge swaths of Asia, and yes, it puts the eastern seaboard of the United States theoretically within striking distance.
And this wasn't some, anonymous leak on a forum. This was broadcast. This was loud.
Oh, it was a state-level announcement. The Tasnim news agency, which is very closely linked to their state security apparatus, they disseminated the initial reports.
Okay.
But the real, let's call it confirmation, came from Mohsen Zangane, a prominent member of the Iranian parliament.
I've got his quote right here. He didn't mince words. He said, quote, "The night before yesterday, we tested one of the country's most advanced missiles that has never been tested before.
Yeah.
And the test was successful."
And notice that phrasing, successful. He didn't say partially successful or launch test conducted.
No, a complete success.
He claimed a complete success. And then you have that other unnamed official quoted saying this proves their commitment to self-reliance.
That's the narrative framing. But the visuals were, even more aggressive. State media aired footage of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei introducing what he literally called a giant weapon.
The framing was completely deliberate. It was designed for an international audience. But as analysts, we can't just take a propaganda video at face value. We have to look at what the sensors and satellites actually saw, because usually what they say and what they do, they can be two very different things.
Which brings us to the eye in the sky, the commercial satellite imagery from September 2025. What did we actually see at the Imam Khomeini Spaceport?
We saw, extraordinary activity. The spaceport is usually monitored 204/7. In September, there was a flurry of vehicle movement, fueling gantries being moved, and burned stars consistent with a heavy launch.
Okay, but here's the catch, right? There was a scheduled space launch for that window, a civilian one.
There was, but it just vanished.
A ghost launch.
In a way, yeah. The civilian launch was scrubbed from the public schedule, but the physical activity on the launch pad just kept going. It suggests a covert military test using the cover of a space program.
It's a classic shell game.
Absolute.
And then, of course, social media lit up. By early this year, we saw a viral post claiming a transcontinental missile test was aimed toward the Siberian Sea. Now, geographically, that's interesting. Why Siberia?
It's very interesting. If you're Iran and you want to test a missile that can hit America, you can't fire it west.
You'll hit NATO or Israel.
And they will intercept it. You can't fire it east. You'll hit China or India, and you need them as economic partners.
So you have to go north.
You have to shoot north over Russia toward the Arctic, the Siberian Sea trajectory. It perfectly mimics the flight path you would use to strike North America over the pole.
With the Great Circle route.
Exactly.
That implies they had permission, though. But we'll get to the Russian connection in a bit. I want to play devil's advocate here. Is it real? Did it actually fly 10,000 kilometers?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question. And skepticism is healthy here. No independent Western intelligence agency, CIA, MI6, has publicly confirmed a fully successful flight profile.
When you say profile, what does that mean? Break that down for us.
A full profile means the launch, the stage separation where the booster falls off, the exoatmospheric coast phase in space, and crucially, the re-entry.
The warhead has to survive coming back into the atmosphere.
At Mach 20 or Mach 25, I mean, the heat that generates is immense. The friction alone would burn up anything that wasn't properly shielded.
It's like hitting a brick wall made of air.
Exactly. And we just haven't seen definitive proof of a successful re-entry and target impact at that 10,000-kilometer range. Western analysts are suggesting this might have been more of a safety test.
So testing the engines and the lift.
Right. Or maybe a partial failure that is being spun as a victory.
So it could be a bluff, or at least a major exaggeration.
It could be. But even a partial success in this weight class is dangerous. And this is where the physical evidence on the ground gets alarming. Because even if the flight wasn't perfect, we know they're building the motors.
Okay, this is the part of the research that really stood out to me. The chemistry. Let's talk about the sodium perchlorate clue.
This is what many intelligence analysts consider the smoking gun. It moves us from speculation to, hard industrial fact.
And just for context, after the conflicts in 2025, the general assumption was that Iran's supply chains were battered. Sanctions were key.
That was the assumption. But satellite images and shipping manifests that were intercepted confirmed a massive arrival of materials in Abbas City back in February 2025. We are talking about 1,000 metric tons of sodium perchlorate.
1,000 tons. Now, for those of us who haven't been in a chemistry lab since high school, why does sodium perchlorate matter?
It's an oxidizer. In a rocket engine, you need fuel and you need oxygen to make it burn.
And there's no oxygen in space.
Right, so you have to bring your own. And sodium perchlorate is the key ingredient for solid fuel propulsion.
Okay, so rocket fuel components. But why is solid fuel the game changer here? What's wrong with the old liquid stuff?
Think about the old SCUD missiles. They used liquid fuel. It's effective, but it is a nightmare to handle. It's corrosive, it's volatile, and most importantly, it takes hours and hours to pump into the rocket.
So if you're trying to launch a surprise attack,
you're a sitting duck.
Yeah.
Satellites see the fuel trucks, they see the gantries, you have hours of warning time. Solid fuel is completely different. It's like a giant battery.
it's already in there.
It's cast into the rocket body at the factory. It sits there stable for years. When you want to launch, you roll it out, lift it upright, and push the button.
It's launch on demand.
Exactly. It cuts the warning time from hours to minutes. And that shipment worth about $2 to $3 million is enough to build dozens, maybe hundreds of large solid fuel motors.
You don't buy 1,000 tons of that for a science fair project.
No. That indicates mass production.
Which ties directly into the Khorramshahr 5, right? The missile they unveiled back in July 2025.
Yes. They claimed the Khorramshahr 5 has a 12,000-kilometer range.
12,000. That covers basically every major capital in the Northern Hemisphere.
Pretty much. And one of their council members, Abulfazl Zoravand, made this chilling comment about it. He said, quote, 10 of them could cause damage equivalent to 2 or 3 nuclear bombs.
That is a terrifying comparison to make, especially for a program they claim is purely conventional.
It signals intent. But there's another layer to this. We often hear the argument, oh, it's just a space program. They want to launch satellites.
The dual-use argument. We hear this all the time.
It is the classic cover, the Civilian Space Launch Vehicle, or SLV. But here's the reality. The physics required to put a satellite into orbit are virtually identical to the physics needed to drop a warhead on a continent.
It's just about what you put on the tip of the rocket.
Precisely. If you can master staging, guidance, and generate enough thrust to reach orbital velocity, you have done 90% of the work for an ICBM. The West has known for years that these satellite launches are essentially ICBM tests hiding in plain sight.
And what about that tip of the rocket, the payload? What kind of capacity are we talking about here?
The estimates for this new class are between 500 and 1,000 kilograms.
Is that enough for a nuclear device?
It is the strategic sweet spot. Early nuclear devices were heavy, but modern designs are much lighter. 500 to 1,000 kilograms is plenty of room for a high-yield conventional warhead or, theoretically, a compact nuclear device.
So if they have the fuel, they have the airframe from the space program tech, and they have the payload capacity. We have to talk about the shifts.
The geostrategic shift. This is the so what of this whole deep dive.
Right, because for decades, the West has categorized Iran as a regional power, a threat to the Middle East, a threat to shipping in the Gulf.
But a 10,000-kilometer range just deletes that category. It transforms Iran from a regional missile power into a global offensive actor.
The map effectively shrinks.
Completely. We aren't just talking about Tel Aviv or Riyadh anymore. We are talking about Brussels, we're talking about Tokyo, and yes, we are talking about New York and Washington, D.C.
I remember that quote from an Iranian official. He said, "America's about 10,000 kilometers from us. We can launch missiles that will hit Washington, New York, and other American cities."
And he added that other nuance, too, about taking ships to within 2,000 kilometers and launching from there, that sort of container missile concept.
But the land-based missile is the real concern.
It's the primary concern because it changes the defensive posture of the entire Western world.
But here's the question that always bugs me. Why? Why build this if you know it makes you a primary target? They know they can't win a full-scale conventional war against the US or NATO.
That is where you have to look at the asymmetric economics. They call it cost-effective preventive investment.
Okay, explain the math to me. Because building these things isn't cheap.
No, but it's all relative. Think about the cost of a missile. Estimates put an Iranian ICBM in the range of, say, $10 to $20 million per unit.
Which is a lot of money, but for a strategic weapon.
It's a bargain. Now look at the cost of stopping it. The defense systems, DHAD, Aegis Ashore, the Patriot batteries, the sensors, the satellite constellations, we are talking about an infrastructure that costs the West tens of billions of dollars.
So for every dollar they spend on offense, the West has to spend 1,000 on defense.
It's a massive imbalance. Even if Iran only builds a handful of these, they force their adversary to bleed money. They're draining the opponent's bank account just by existing.
It's financial attrition. You win by making the other guy go broke trying to protect himself.
Precisely, and it ties directly into the concept of strategic ambiguity.
Uncertainty as a weapon.
Yes, they don't need to prove to us that the missile works perfectly every single time. They just need U.S. defense planners to fear that it might work.
You can't ignore a 10% chance of a nuclear strike on New York. You have to plan as if it's 100%.
Exactly. It forces a maximum capability response. You have to plan for the worst case scenario. And that gives Iran leverage. It's a bargaining chip. It says, don't push us into a corner or we might just roll the dice.
That is an incredibly stressful way to look at it, but
yeah.
Effective. Now, this isn't happening in a vacuum. You mentioned Russia earlier and the trajectory over the Siberian Sea.
The Russian connection is deeply concerning. It fundamentally alters the alliance map.
The rumors about airspace permission, if that's true, that's huge.
It's monumental. If Russia allowed Iran to test a missile by firing it towards the Siberian Sea, it implies a level of trust and coordination we haven't seen before. It means they're sharing sensitive military data.
You don't just let someone fly a ballistic missile over your territory.
No. Not unless you're practically allies. It creates an axis of upheaval. And then there are the unconfirmed claims about Russia supplying Iskander missiles to Iran as well.
The Iskander, that's a short-range missile, but it's very hard to intercept.
Correct. So you have a convergence. Tehran and Moscow are potentially sharing technology, airspace, and strategy. Moscow gets drones, Tehran gets advanced missile tech, and a testing ground.
So what's the U.S. saying about all this? Is the Pentagon confirming it?
The Pentagon is being very, very cautious. They're refusing to officially confirm the 10,000-kilometer test success.
Why the silence?
Likely because they don't want to give Iran the satisfaction of validation. Confirming it gives Iran a massive propaganda win, but they are acknowledging the dual-purpose threat of the space program. They know the tech is there.
And Israel. They're usually the first to react.
Israel is in a tricky spot. After the confrontation in 2025, they are maintaining a stance of preemptive deterrence.
Which means what?
Quiet sabotage, cyber warfare, thwarting efforts where possible without starting a hot war. But the stakes are higher now. If Iran has a solid fuel ICBM, the window for Israel to act preemptively shrinks dramatically.
Let's zoom out to the other side of the world, the Indo-Pacific. Why does Japan or China care about an Iranian missile?
Well, for China, it's complicated. On one hand, they might see this as useful pressure. If the U.S. is panicked about Iranian missiles, they might shift focus away from the Indo-Pacific.
A strategic distraction.
Right. But for everyone else in Asia, for ASEAN, Japan, South Korea, This is a nightmare. It imports Middle East instability directly into their energy security.
Because of the oil.
Exactly. The Strait of Hormuz. If tensions spike because of these missiles, oil prices go up, maritime insurance rates skyrocket. Suddenly, the economy in Jakarta or Tokyo is taking a hit because of a missile silo in Iran.
It shows how interconnected it all is.
Yeah.
You can't isolate a 10,000-kilometer threat.
No. Geography protections are eroding. That's the main takeaway. Distance is no longer a shield.
So let's wrap this up. We've got the claim, 10,000 kilometers. We've got the evidence, the 1,000 tons of sodium perchlorate, the satellite imagery, and we've got a strategy forcing the world to spend billions to counter a threat that costs millions to build.
That sums it up. Whether the missile flew the full distance perfectly or not is almost secondary now. The claim itself, backed by just enough evidence to be plausible, has already achieved the strategic goal. It has forced the world to treat Iran as a transcontinental threat.
Is the shadow of the weapon that does the damage.
Precisely, and that shadow is casting a very long darkness over 2026.
So here is the final thought I want to leave you with. We live in an era where strategic ambiguity is a weapon. If a nation can force its enemies to spend billions on defense based on a shadow of a threat, have they already won the engagement without firing a single shot? And if that sodium perchlorate shipment indicates mass production, what happens when the ambiguity disappears and the silos open for real?
That is the question that keeps defense analysts up at night.
On that note, thank you everyone for listening or watching. This has been The Deep Dive. If you enjoyed this analysis, please check out our other deep dives in the series. We cover everything from AI warfare to economic shifts. Stay curious, stay informed, and we will see you next time.